Hi 8th grade, this is Mrs. C, your visual content specialist. Today we're going to be using a strategy called 5 W's and an H. This strategy is going to help us understand what the texts that we engage with are all about. Using this strategy, you will be able to determine central ideas of a text and demonstrate synthesis or your understanding of that text by creating a summary using the information that you gather through this strategy. So what are the 5 W's and an H? This is a self-questioning technique that supports our understanding of what we're reading. By self-questioning, I mean that as you read, you are asking yourself these questions in order to start to understand what the important facts are about in the text or what this text is mainly about. In order to use the 5 W's and an H effectively, you need to do 3 things. The first is start by reading your text in chunks. By reading your text in sections, you're giving yourself the opportunity to process the information in little bits. Second, ask yourself the 5 W's and an H. And third, put the information you've gathered all together to create a summary. Creating summaries not only helps our teachers understand what you understand, but it also helps you put everything together in order to get a whole picture of what you just read. We're going to start by reading one of our texts from Passport to Social Studies in chunks. So we're only going to do a small part of it. While we read, we're going to be asking ourselves who, what, when, where, why, and how. And as we respond to these questions within ourselves, we're going to take notes or annotate for that information. And finally, we're going to use that information from the 5 W's and an H that we've identified and put it all together to create a summary. This is an anchor chart to help us understand what questions it is that we're going to be asking ourselves when engaging with a text. Who is this text about? What happened? Where did it take place? When did it take place? Why did it happen? And how did it happen? So in day 15 of our unit, Passport to Social Studies, we start to engage in texts around workplace conditions and regulations, in particular, Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, which is a report on the conditions of the working conditions in stockyards. And here is an article that I found about Upton Sinclair's The Jungle. We're going to be reading this section here, and we're going to model the who, what, when, where, why, and how, and then create a summary. So that way we understand how it is that we're going to use this technique exactly. So I'll begin. Upton Sinclair's The Jungle leads to meat inspection laws. I see an image. There's some men here. I see somebody has a piece of cattle here, maybe some over here as well. I want to infer that these men are butchers maybe. And then when I read here, men wearing bloody butcher coats and carrying animal carcasses gather in a street in front of Peter Britton and Sons while other men look on during the 1904 stockyards strike in Chicago. President Theodore Roosevelt signed the Meat Inspection Act into law on June 30th, 1906. This was a big change for the meat packers, the industry that processed animals for food. So far, what information can I gather from here? Who is this about? So we have President Theodore Roosevelt. We also have the meat packers. So I'm going to start by annotating for those two things. So President Theodore Roosevelt, meat packers. What they're talking about the Meat Inspection Act and the industry that processes animals for food. So Meat Inspection Act and food process industry. When I see a date here, June 30th, 1906. So June 30th, 1906. And where I saw on the picture, it says Chicago, so I'm going to write down Chicago, United States. Why we don't know and how we don't know yet, so we're going to keep reading. The act outlawed the sale of contaminated or mislabeled food products. It also stated that livestock such as cattle, swine, sheep, goats, and horses had to be killed and processed under clean conditions. The U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, was required to inspect all livestock before processing, then inspect the food products afterward. Imported meat products also had to pass strict inspections. Previous laws designed to improve food safety had not worked. For example, the Meat Inspection Acts of 1890, 1891 had not made the meat packers' workplaces safe and clean. So why was this law passed? Food was not processed safely and it wasn't clean. It was contaminated. How? Workplaces were not safe and clean. So now that I have all of my who, what, when, where, why, and how, I can use that information to write down a summary or what this text is about. Keep in mind that your summary may not come until the very end of the text, but because we're modeling with a short version of a text, I'm going to go ahead and write the summary for this part of the text that I just read. So in 1906, laws were passed by President Theodore Roosevelt that required food to be processed safely because food was still being contaminated in workplaces. So just a short summary of what I've read so far. Again, your summary might come way later after you finish the reading, but this is just to model what we've just read. So in your notebook, it might look something like this, or on your worksheet, it might look something like this with your annotations on the side of the text and a summary at the bottom. So now it's your turn. One great opportunity that you have to use the 5 W's and 1 H is in day 15, of our Passport to Social Studies unit. Workplace Conditions and Regulations, Upton Sinclair's The Jungle, where you're going to read excerpts of Upton Sinclair's actual book, The Jungle, and you'll have the opportunity to write down all the facts that you encounter in the text. And this is an example of an excerpt here, along with our annotations on the side for the 5 W's and an H.